a friend of mine, a mutual friend of ours. So he met your daughter and he called you, texted you to get her out. How is it possible in 2024?
To text me and ask to
Yeah.
date her. Yeah.
And your daughter is 20 years old,
She's
right?
20. Yeah. 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 And I gave him a hard time.
How do you keep those standards?
Okay. I mean, that starts from when your kids are young, you know? So one of the biggest mistakes that conservatives have made in their families is not teaching them why they believe what they believe. Okay. My daughters, my family, I gave speeches on this in the past, but we would talk about why we believe, like you and I on this podcast. Okay. There's the reason that I'm able to talk about a lot of these subjects. Okay. It's because I thought about these things, right? If you never think about these things or go down and investigate them, you've got nothing to say. And then so by default, what happens is a lot of conservatives, I grew up in a conservative household. I'm a really conservative guy. Okay, great. Why do you believe what you believe? Well, I don't know. And then how can you then, around a dinner table, expect your kids to be able to defend their faith? And by faith, I don't mean just Christian faith, but their belief system. You know, how can they defend their views on, interventionism in the world, how can, but I mean, from the smallest things to the biggest things, we have to have conversations, right? So one of the things that we talked about with the girls, growing up is that to go counter to the world's idea, which has not been working out well, is that you go and you date a whole bunch of people, you run around, you amass a massive body count, sleep with 50 people, and then, maybe you'll figure out which one you liked, right? All of those sort of things that are wrecking young girls, right? That are wrecking people before they even start families, all that stuff is super unhealthy. So my girls, the idea was, okay, they're going to have goals written down about the kind of person that they want to be with, the kind of man that they want, the kind of values that they're going to share with that person. All that sort of stuff is very detailed in their mind. And then when they meet someone that fits some of that criteria, they then can start asking questions to see if they fit all the criteria, and then they can start going deep in conversation. And one thing I told John, he evolved in my mind from the usurper to the to boyfriend John, finally I think I called him Pendergast, and he's been on the show, and so in fact your show was one of the reasons why I thought, okay, I'll listen to this guy, but he was on your show and talked about his faith and all that stuff, and I listened to that with great deal of scrutiny, and had very long conversations with him. But yeah, I called him Pendergast and made it sound like it was a swear word every time it came out of my mouth, because I was not ready to have my daughter be dating anybody. She's my oldest. I have 3 girls, and I wasn't ready. But I mean, I told him right off the bat, dude, this is going to go slowly before it needs to go fast. And what I meant by that was slowly, meaning that you guys got to get to know each other. Now, my daughter's very well put together, and beautiful, and a very sincere and serious person. So she had a list that was like notebooks of questions, right? And asked, and
she's a tough girl to date.
Yeah, dude. But I mean, high value girl should be.
Yeah.
I mean, can you imagine how many gals who are good people have just thrown, all of that away by, jumping into bed with the first person that they meet, and then, having a kid, and then all of a sudden, oh man, I don't really like this person, and it's too late, right? That's not the way. Or how many have wasted their time, years, with somebody who was like, okay, and like, yeah, well, I guess that's all right. And then, 6, 7 years later, they've got nothing to show for it. And then they're breaking up, and, maybe they lived together for a few years, and now they're, arguing over custody of the dog. Mm-hmm. That's not the better way to go about it. We actually had a time where families got together, and, this is where John gave me the respect of asking me. I mean, I also created a fearsome reputation out there, which helped.
Fourth degree black belt.
Well, yeah, and dude, all of those guys that were in the young adults ministry, Chad, who was on your show, is part of the leader of that young adults ministry, right? And they're all great people, but a lot of them came to my jiu-jitsu school, and I would savage them all. Like, I would murder them just because I wanted them all to be a little bit like, yeah, do not mess with his girls. I mean, I got 3 of the most beautiful girls in all the land, man. Yeah, I gotta keep in shape and keep that reputation.
Give me at least a few points of that list that your daughter had to ask John.
I mean, I didn't, so I didn't see her particular list, but it would be things like, just there's things. I would sum it up into categories because I've had these conversations. There's things on the list that are like non-negotiables about your belief system in the world. Are you a Christian? Do you love Jesus? What do you think about X, Y, and Z in terms of your faith? How do you express your faith? All of those sort of things, right? You start with those really big ones that are like, okay, he's not even a Christian. I'm out. I mean,
right away.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Maybe he'll convert.
Well,
maybe she's going to convert.
We're not Mormons. We don't believe in missionary dating because that's not a good idea, right? And I'm giving my Mormon friends a little bit of bad time there, but there are people who think that that's a good idea. I do not think it's a good idea, right? Especially for a young lady. It's probably different for a guy, to be honest. Let's say you do find a young gal who's amazing in all these ways, and you guys really jive, and she shares a bunch of your values, but she's not really committed to the church. Invite her to church. Hey, I would like to date you. Why don't we go to church? Because a man is more likely to, if a man becomes a Christian and he's the head of his household, there's like a 98% chance that the entire family will become a Christian. If it's the other way around, there's very little chance. It's like in the 30% or something like that. The dude, doesn't generally follow his wife into that. But a strong leader, man, that man, because we are a patriarchy, that the leadership of that man will transform that woman. So I have a little bit different view there, but you better start dating her by taking her to church and saying, this is what I'm about, and be a leader in that, and be unashamedly so, and see what happens there. But don't knock her up, don't be violating that.
And the props to John, he didn't get afraid of this.
I did give him stomach issues for a little while, but
I can only imagine if I was like,
yeah, no, I mean, look, I love this guy, and now like I put a lot of pressure on him, from the outset. But when he came to sit down with me and ask to marry her, which was just a month or so ago. At my cigar club, we sat down and smoked a cigar, and I knew why he's coming out. Hey, I'm going to come to Idaho for a week. What are you doing? I knew what was up, right?
What do you want?
It was about that time. No, so we sat down and we started talking about family, importance of family, and I complimented him on being a good big brother to my daughters, my other girls, because he has been really ministering and sweet to them too. He's been a good dude to them, and he's been awesome with my wife. All those sort of things. He's fit right into all that, and I was. We were just having a heart-to-heart about those things, and I go, and so he's like, so I've got something else. I go, I know why you're here, but I teed him up, because the hard part is just getting through, that like, the outside protection, getting inside the walls, man. That's the tough part, and he got inside the walls,
He's like the U.S. government official who wants to get his law. He has to go to Congress, then to the Senate, to the White House. So he had to go to you first to get a yes. Yeah. Then he proposed to her. She said yes. So
yeah. I mean, because you want, and again, being traditional, you want the blessing of the family, right? And I represent the family. Now, in that, Michelle, my wife, needed to get to know him, right? And so that was the first thing I said when I said, okay, here's how this is going to go. You guys need to talk on the phone for a little while, get to know each other in that way. Get some of these non-negotiables out. Have long conversations where you're not staring into each other's eyes. Have conversations on the phone and talk to each other about what you believe believe and what you think and, who you are and all that sort of stuff. Get that out of the way for a little while, have some hours of conversation on the phone. Then go have a cup of coffee. Again, let's not introduce romance yet, because boy, when you're staring into some beautiful pair of, green eyes or something, what was I going to ask? Oh, I forgot. Let's kiss. Get some of that stuff out of the way, right? Don't cause yourself, early temptation or distraction. Then I said, all right, then you're going to have to come around and spend some time with us at dinner, come be part of family dinners. And,
Was he nervous?
Yeah, he'll say he was. I mean, he's a strong dude, and he's a fighter, and he's a stoic, and he's got some cojones to go
Not
through.
in a jar.
Not in a jar. But I mean, he's a strong guy. I mean, and by the way, a weak guy would not have gotten through the intensity of what I put him through. But I mean, that is to, Angela's credit that, the first thing she said to me is, Dad, if you say it's no, it's no, and if you don't want me to date him, I won't. And he said the same thing to me. Sir, if you say it's no, it's no. Which was the right thing to say, and
you really think so? He wouldn't pursue her if you said no?
Yeah, I don't think he would have. Yeah, he was afraid. He confessed to me the other day, or he was telling my wife and girls that he was afraid that I was going to say no, and he was kind of prepared for like, okay, well,
That's what I think of you.
Well, no, because man, I would have buried him in the desert. I'm only slightly exaggerating there. I would not have made now again. If I think what he knew, and I'm joking about that, well, maybe, but what he knew was that the tightness of my relationship with my daughters is such that if I said not only no, but hell no, this is the wrong guy for you, and I do not approve, then he would have been. He knew that would not have been something that she would have been okay with.
How did you get this kind of a relationship with your three girls? You were a businessman.
Yeah.
So it means you weren't always home, right?
Right. I mean, I travel a lot and I travel extensively.
So how to get this kind of relationship with your kids?
Well, because, when we are together, we're together. And man, for daughters, what girls need is affection and stability. Okay. And they need somebody to put parameters around them. They need guardrails. Kids in general need guardrails. Daughters and sons to a certain extent, but more so daughters need affection. Okay. They need hugs. They need big hugs. They need cuddles with their daddy. That's the kind of thing that keep them off of other men's laps. That's the kind of thing that keep them from, going in other directions for affection, right? Because because they're missing that. The gals that are going down a lot of those paths, destructive paths that way, it's because they are trying to fill a void that they didn't get from their dad. Mm-hmm. My girls got that from me. That's, I've said on my show a bunch of times, for all the troubles that, marriage brings and all the challenges that you have with your spouse and all the challenges my wife and I have and all those sort of things, this has been one area that God has uniquely blessed. We have been of one mind when it comes to raising our girls, and we've been very jointly just in lockstep with just unity. There was no, oh, Dad said no, let me ask Mom. Mom said no, let me ask Dad. There was none of that in our house. There was no manipulating us against each other. There was none of that. We just did not have that. And we also homeschooled, right? So there was ability, like, for 8 years, we did CrossFit together as a family. Every day. Every day that I was in town, which generally, I was traveling like just a couple of days a week, or gone 3 or 4 days every other week, things like that. So I was in town enough to where I was, going with them to go exercise. Going to hair on fire CrossFit workouts, and that was their PE. That was their physical education as part of homeschool,
And girls get their true self-esteem right from dad, right?
Yeah, and I also, we set standards of exercise. We ate healthy together, things like that. I never talked about their weight. I never to emphasized their beauty as a value. I never
You mean you didn't
emphasized.
sexualize it?
Well, beyond that, because that is the obvious, right?
Yeah, but maybe you can sexualize like in a good way.
Yeah.
You're so beautiful. You're gonna
Yeah, I
get
mean, I certainly told my daughters that they were beautiful and all that sort of stuff, but that was a small value to big values of character, big values of their behavior, their actions, what they did. We were very careful never to, because you can get, girls will get very funky about their looks and their weight and pleasing people with those outside dimensions. If you emphasize those in a weird way or a wrong way, or you made those a value, like if you're skinny, daddy loves you,
that's bulimia.
Well, yeah, I mean, girls, well, it manifests itself a million ways. It can manifest itself in eating disorders, unhealthy, views of their weight. It can manifest itself in, going to get sexual gratification from men to make them feel beautiful. All that stuff can be really, really bad.
And then you have OnlyFans, you can get this gratification right away.
And
you just do a picture, you get the money for that.
You get the money in the comments. Yeah.
What about friends? Do your girls have a lot of friends girls?
Yeah. And so one thing that was really great. So my girls are, just like 14 months apart, my oldest two, and then my youngest's 5 years younger. They created their own crew, right? And because we homeschooled, because we also put them in very positive activities. We mentioned CrossFit, but they're musicians. They're high-level violinists. So they're professional violinists. My oldest two teach basic piano, violin, and then they also teach. So they have their own group of students, and then they taught at a couple of different schools at the same time, basic music and basic orchestra and that kind of thing. So, and then they would earn money performances and performing at weddings and all that sort of stuff. But very, very talented musicians. They also sing, they play guitar, they play piano. My oldest Angela plays the drums. They're very talented. So they are around a lot of kids in those circles, and those circles were intentionally chosen. I didn't choose gymnastics. I didn't choose cheer. I didn't overemphasize other sports and things like that take away from the family and make it to where every weekend you're going to soccer games, or even on Sundays you're skipping church because you got the soccer tournament. I do not think that those are things that are of great value, and they're not certainly things of very lasting value. Can you learn in sports teamwork and some of those things? Yeah. You can certainly learn teamwork in orchestra too. Yeah. But I don't think those things are very valuable. And then they also done jujitsu over the last few years with me as well. And so, getting all of that stuff is very good. So there's circles of friends that came from that. And then I curate friends. And this is a recommendation I make for your listeners. You can't pick your family, but you can pick your friends, and you can curate people that you want to be friends with. Like, I want to be friends with you. Why do you think I invited you out to, come visit us in Idaho? Because you're a good dude. You're a guy that I would like to be friends. I curate friends, and when you're on my team, you're on my team, right? And I will do anything for you. And I find people that I like, that have great value, that fit within our circles, and I invest in those friendships. I mean, you'll get random calls from me because my rule is if you pop into my mind, you're one of my friends. I'm either shooting you a text right then and there saying, hey man, you're on my mind, I hope you're well, or I'm giving you a phone call. What's up, man? You came onto my mind. What's going on? What's happening? Investing in friends who share your values, who have something to offer in life, who inspire you to things, who do good works, who do stuff that's admirable, are involved in hobbies that you're interested in, or have skills that you don't have but you'd like to have. Find those people and then put your kids with their kids. Because those people generally, and you have to be careful about it, you have to pay attention. People have different styles in the way that they raise kids. I have friends that have free-range children, who are just a little bit loose with things that I would not be a little bit loose on. Okay, well, we'll have a certain amount of depth there, but maybe I don't want them to hang out with kids who spend all their time online or playing video games or on TikTok or, so you have to be careful about that, but you curate friends and you curate friends for your children too.
Did you have any riots from the girls? Like my friend told me this, or my friend's parents told me this. Why can't I?
So my girls generally, because they were their own unit, like they were their own club. My girls were the leaders because, they were so close in age. They made things look fun. They were leaders. Like my middle daughter is a very natural leader and people follow her. And she would, from the very youngest age, would go off over there and be playing and doing something cool. And other people would be like, wow, what is she doing over there? That looks really cool and fun. And I think I'm going to go over there and be with her and do what her activity is. So my girls kind of created that thing where they, in the neighborhood, with all the friends, they would invent things. They weren't sitting at home on the TV. They would invent they did wagon train, and they built this, wagon and all these things, and they would drag it around the neighborhood like they were, part of the wagon trains across the United States, and they'd stop at everybody's houses for supplies, and they would spend a whole day or two, playing old-fashioned days or wagon train, or they would film these elaborate charades and movies that they'd invent and write. And, it was really positive, fun activities. And they would get all of the friends in the neighborhood to do it too.
But did you intentionally make them to be proactive?
Well, what we did was we didn't give them nonsense passive activities at their disposal. Like, we didn't just automatically, plunk them. I was at a... one time we went out for my wife's birthday to Ruth's Chris Steakhouse right around the corner from here, right? And my favorite steak, still to this day, it's a buttery steak. But anyway, so we
How dare you?
Yes.
Insects.
Yeah, I should be eating insect protein now. But anyway, so we sat down and we had like 4 or 5, and I'm not exaggerating, it was probably 5 people, patrons, also having dinner there, or the wait staff saying, wow, man, your girls are amazing. So they were like 9 and under at that time, right? So, maybe Abby was 4 or 5, but they all ordered their own meals, looking at the waiter or waitress. I would like to have a petite filet, medium rare, please, with, looking them in the eye, describing what they want, answering the questions, all that stuff. We sat around the table, and they engaged us in conversation about the latest pieces that they were learning and who their favorite composers were, because they're deep into the violin thing, and so people are overhearing these articulate girls talk about their favorite composers and why they like certain pieces, as we're having just normal other conversation too. We're not all nerdy all the time. But they're talking about books that they're reading. We're having this fun conversation, eating steak for my wife's birthday. The only other kid in that entire place that didn't have a iPad in front of their face watching a movie with headphones on was Adam Sandler's kid. And Adam Sandler was sitting just a little ways across from us, and his kid and him were having great conversation, just the two of them. He was fully 100% in. And it wasn't, and the reason I noticed this is because I was like, wow, okay, yeah, we've done a good job, but why is this so remarkable right now that people are going, I was listening to your kids, oh my gosh, it's so great, what a good job you guys are doing, because I just looked around the restaurant and every other kid in there was locked into some kind of a screen.
Mm-hmm. What about boys? If you had boys, would you implement the same thing? Like, don't have sex with a girl prior to wedding?
Well, yeah. I mean, the standard should be the standard. It doesn't change whether
it's
a
sexist.
Yeah, that's right. I'm an egalitarian. So the same rules apply. No, because I mean, what you're setting yourself up for is very important there. I mean, but with boys, man, boys need to get energy out. Boys need to channel their energy. Why do you think the schools are so bad for kids? Boys sitting there at these desks being told that they need to be more feminine in the way that they are quiet and sitting, and more attuned to feminine ideas in a classroom, when boys should be out there getting their hands dirty, doing things physically, burning energy. That's why I'm a big believer in boys and girls in jiu-jitsu, but boys especially need rough play. They need all those things that channel them. And then I'm about getting married quickly. Again, we said earlier, society has perverted all that stuff to everybody's waiting, and it's not working out better. Everybody's, waiting until they're, much older, and they've got high body counts, and they've got, they've spent some of their best, most, virulent, vigorous years wasted.
Yeah, but at the same time, boys, they can't sit quiet in a classroom. They get diagnosed with ADHD. They pump them with the pills.
Yeah, horrible.
That's horrible.
Yeah.
So this was natural like 60 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
What happened that this became unnatural at all? The hippie movement? What happened? What was awakened?
Feminism.
During the hippie era?
So, the roots to what we have go way back. So it's not just the hippie area. Most of these seeds get planted, decades ago. You have, administrators of education and, the Department of Education and things like that. There's a lot of people that believe, and I do too, that, we were building factory workers. So let's create these school systems to get people to just, sit there and by rote do their job and memorize things. We went away from classical Christian education. If people want to listen to my podcast, I had David Goodwin on just a few episodes ago, and he's the head of classical Christian schools across the country. Independent classical Christian. The Greeks invented the way of learning in this classical style of teaching you to think. We stopped teaching them to think. We just teach them to memorize things to prepare for, jobs as assembly line workers. That's not what we want, right? So you have to go counter to that. But that got put into our public education system. Everybody said, oh, I guess that's what we're doing. Everybody got in line after, remember, generational problems. A couple of generations, and then that's what we had. And then they started feminizing. They started seeing that these rascally boys, they have a problem. No, they're boys who need to become men, and they need to be given tasks to do that are with their hands, and they need to get out there, and they need to learn by touching things, and we need trades. We need people to learn how to do, electrical stuff and plumbing and build houses and all those sort of things that, most people shouldn't go to college, shouldn't go to university. Most people should go to trade school.
So feminism occurred 1960s?
No, feminism goes again way back. There's first wave feminism, which was Susan B. Anthony was an occultist. It has its roots in the occult. It has its roots going right back to the Bible and sort of the disordered mentality of the matriarchy. When we are in a patriarchy, and a patriarchy is the only way that we can have peace, and it's God's design for order. And does that diminish women? Of course it doesn't. But they're going to tell you that does. They're going to tell you that women should be abandoning traditional roles of being the primary caregiver in a home and primary responsibility for rearing children. They're going to tell you that that's terrible for them, and that they should sacrifice their life in a cubicle for a career. And be a slave to some other dude. It's ridiculous. But again, that has its root. Susan B. Anthony was an avowed open occultist. It's got a lot of roots in that. It's got a lot of roots in envy and jealousy between sexes, and all kinds of stuff that's just totally unhealthy. When again, you've met at least one of my daughters. You've met Angela. Man, my girls are not weak. They are self-determined, strong gals that, are very, very talented, very, very smart. And if you were to ask each one of them, they have their career aspirations are basically, I want to be a wife and mother, and I'd like to do music, and I'd like to, certainly have opportunities to do great things with music and all that stuff, but I want to be a wife and mother. And that happened certainly under our style of raising them, but it happened because they saw the value of it and loved it, and they love children, and that's why they're teaching kids, and why they're so into that, and man, it's amazing how good they are at it.
So in your opinion, there is no coincidences, right? It's all a game plan. Like the feminism, then the hippies, all that stuff, bam, 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 step by step. Because let's take, I want to say 20 years ago, and I was thinking of 1990 something. So let's have 30 to 40 years ago, the movies, we didn't see any gay scenes. Right now, it's like you can't even find a movie without a gay scene.
Oh, I mean, if you just went by what you saw in commercials or Hollywood or at magazine advertisements, you would think that every other person is gay, or transgender, or
queer,
non-binary, or something. Every other person. I mean, they've done that so intentionally to us, and you would also think that every single burglar on the planet is a white dude, because they've gone so much into conditioning us for certain things.
So all by plan.
Yeah,
everything is designed.
Yeah, and now is it designed by man? No, I mean there's spiritual forces. We're in a world that's battling spiritual forces.